February 1st as a staffer. I was freelancing before.
So I've been doing the opening speech for 10 years, so I figure I got it memorized or something like that. Ken, you've done this before. Tammy, I don't think you have.
No, I have
So the goal of this conversation is going to last about 30 minutes, and our goal is to get to know both of you and also to distinguish both of you.
Mm-hmm.
So we are filming this for an audience of roughly 27 people. It's not a debate, so the goal is not to give each of you equal time or necessarily to have the two of you argue with each other, although if you disagree with each other, please speak up and say so. We want to hear where you differ. We'll be asking questions with the goal of trying to make sure we understand what differentiates the two of you from each other. So we may be pressing in on like some of the points in which you disagree, but the intent is not to cause a fight. The intent is to figure out where you disagree, and then also to help us understand who we ought to endorse in this race. So without further ado, we traditionally allow the incumbent to give the opening remarks. Representative Helm, could you tell us
thanks.
about yourself? And then also if you could tell us a little bit about the district that you're going to be representing, or that you are representing, excuse me.
Sure. So Ken Helm, I currently represent House District 34, and I've represented that district since getting elected in 2014. I'll just give you a brief overview of what of the committees I've served on. So I currently chair the Ag, Land Use, and Water Committee. I serve on the Energy and Natural Resource Committee. It used to be the Energy and Environment Committee, and chaired that for 3 sessions. And I serve on our Judiciary Committee. Over the years, I've served on our Economic Development Committee, which is now called Economic Development and Prosperity, I believe. Short stint on the Revenue Committee and on our Cannabis committees starting in 2015. That work has gone into different committees. The District 34 is primarily the north part of Beaverton. It has the neighborhoods of West Haven, which is behind St. Vincent's Hospital, parts of West Slope, and parts of Cedar Mill, Cedar Hills, and then...
Do you have the new steak shack in there?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Oh, there's this whole Cedar Hills crossing or whatever it's called, this development. My primary care physician is actually located in that parking garage / you know where Virginia Garcia is?
I do.
So I end up like eating at Shake Shack kind of daily now. Point is, I wanted to see if that was part of your district.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that good enough for now?
Yeah, it's great. Sorry, that was way off. That was I was quizzing you. I'm just curious about where the lines kind of.
I have not been to Shake Shack.
You got to try it.
I'm going to try it.
So Tammy Carpenter moved to Raleigh Hills in 2004 from Chicago to do my residency in anesthesiology at OHSU. So I've spent the last 20 plus years as a doctor and a mom, and feeling like I've been sitting on the sidelines for a while now and wanting to be a part of making it better. So trying to shift gears a little bit and hope to be a good citizen legislator, not bringing with my candidacy a wealth of experience, obviously, in actually serving an elected office, nor really of like activism or anything like that. I have participated in the DSA and in the 2020 Bernie campaign. That was my first time to do some canvassing and get out and meet people, and had more than one person say, "I'm not going to vote for Bernie, but I'll vote for you." Thought that was a bit of an endorsement. So that's what I'm bringing to this race.
Great. Can you tell us what would change under you if you were represented this district as opposed to Representative Helm?
I feel like, and I think Ken would probably agree with this, that I'm mostly running, a more left campaign, and so most of my principles would be to bring about single-payer health care to Oregon. California just tried for the second time. Feels like they got close, and I feel like if we can get critical mass in Salem, that we can shift the needle there and actually make this happen. So single-payer health care. I think part of us looking at this homelessness crisis that we're really struggling with, part of it is, mental health. And when we look at how people are, we rank last, dead last in the number of, well, I guess we're number one, in the number of adults with mental illness. And yet we only have 25% of the mental health providers that we need to address.
Wait, is that per capita?
Per capita.
Just Oregon's number one in
The number of
adults
adults with mental illness.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, not number of adults with mental illness who are living
On the streets.
on the
No,
street.
No,
But
these are
it's
just like,
wow.
yeah. And some of that, maybe, we're sort of, the left coast that kind of is like, and people feel comfortable saying, you know what, I suffer from generalized anxiety disorder. Whereas people in other parts of the country, that might not be something that is part of who they present to the world. Yeah, so mental health is a huge part of what's going on right now and the unmet need there. We had people with housing precarity before the pandemic, and you stop working for a few months and all of a sudden you're out on the streets. So affordable housing has to be a part of it. Honestly, the bit like wave the magic wand moment would be for us to have more public housing and more and mixed income public housing. If we could replicate Vienna overnight and just say that I think it's like 93% of people in Vienna live in either public housing or rent stabilized housing. We no longer have housing as a commodity, and I believe housing is a human right. So that's the magic wand moment that I'd like to have.
So before we get to your record, I actually want to take this moment to ask you, and this may seem like an overly aggressive line of questioning, how's he failing?
I think that overall, Ken has a really good voting record. OLCB gave him 96, 90, somewhere in there. So I think in general, Ken does have a good voting record. So where is he failing? I think that something that I struggle to reconcile in my mind is somebody who accepts oil and gas money while we're in the middle of this climate catastrophe. And it doesn't I'm not implicating his voting record in any way, but I just feel like it causes you to question motivations, and it's hard to justify in my mind accepting those types of donations when we are faced with 3 years. Just the latest IPCC said something about if we don't cut in half in 3 years or something like that, we can't, no return. So I feel like we need to treat the climate crisis like the impending crisis that it is. So, but having said that, like I said, he has a very good voting record, and I'm not going to suggest that he has taken any votes that were influenced by his donations.
You want to respond to that?
Sure.
I mean, mostly it's a compliment, but
Well, what I'll point out is on that voting record component and with respect to climate, when you look back at what I've done, my fingerprints are on every piece of climate legislation, every piece of clean energy legislation, every piece of environmental legislation. So that starts with the clean fuel standard that, by the way, I and 4 other legislators created the Environmental Caucus in 2015 to save the clean fuels program from Democrats in the Senate trading it away for a transportation package. And we have it today. That program is right now reducing the carbon content of gas and diesel. By the time we are done, I think we are 6 or 7 years in. By the time we're done, we will have reduced the carbon content of transportation fuels by 20% over where they started in 2015. If you look at our 2016 legislation to take the coal energy out of our electricity grid, fingerprints all over that. Starting in the interim of 2016 and driving through 2019, Senator Dembro and I were the driving force. He and I were a team to push a cap and trade system that would have addressed our climate concerns in the state. In fact, the bill that we passed in 2019, which was carried by my friend Karin Power, was built on the architecture that Senator Dembro and I started.
Is it clean energy jobs?
Yes. Yeah. Clean energy jobs was what we called it. And then most recently, in terms of big picture items, I was part of the promoting House Bill 2021 in the 2021 legislative session, and that gets our electric grid to 100% renewable energy by 2040. So all in the middle of that. Along the way in that bill, I'm really proud to have gotten $50 million for local community-based renewable energy projects that can be drawn on all over the state. And those are just the big things. When you look at the other stuff I've done around the edges, I've focused on electric vehicles, so pushed for the state rebate that we have right now, which the social science says is the best way to incent people to buy electric vehicles. I've done slightly less sexy things on electric vehicles, like make sure that our multifamily housing is EV charge ready. We made sure that tenants that want to install their own charging get the right to do so as long as they pay for it. And I also, along with my now departed Republican colleague Cliff Bentz, championed quadrupling the scope of solar projects that could occur with county approval. So, that's the record I've got. I think it's kind of hard to beat. I've been an environmental leader in both my own caucus and the legislature since getting there. OLCV brought me to this party. They're still dancing with me. They've endorsed me in this race. So I can assure voters that they're getting the same Ken that has been here for the last 8 years if I'm reelected.
Anthony?
What did you make, how do you feel about the DEQ rulemaking that happened after the Republican walkout? Do you feel like what Oregonians got there is sound and up to your standards?
That up to my standards, I'm disappointed that that's the way we had to go. You're right, just to recap, the House passed the cap and trade bill.
Yeah.
And then my Republican colleagues were so uncomfortable with that they walked out. That left the governor in the driver's seat, and she, through executive order, tried to do what she could. The disappointing part about that isn't that she did it or that she did a bad job. Our agencies are doing a bad job right now. It's the type of approach. It continues to be regulatory top-down control. It's the slowest and most expensive. So for the folks that are going to be complying with various standards coming out of our agencies, it's the hardest to do. And I felt like a cap and trade system was both more efficient and easier. So that isn't to say that we're not making progress, and the agencies have submitted various plans. They're implementing them now or creating rules to implement them. So the fair thing to do is wait and see, and then help them along the way do the best they can. That, to me, that means making sure they have the staff they need to do the job right.
Yeah. You mentioned you're running from the left. Mm-hmm. How do you think? How would you approach climate any differently than the representative in these battles in the legislature, where the Republicans they walked out and paralyzed the process? Is there an approach is there something you could have done if you were in the legislature that could have led to a legislative solution, which I think everybody agrees would have been better?
I feel like, again, as an outsider and watching both state and national politics, that some of what I think Democrats need to do better is that we need to start the negotiations from our ideal. This is what we want. And I feel like we often will open negotiations with our compromise position, and then you're compromising your way all the way over to a Republican, something that they can get behind. So I think you lead with your ideals. And, I have, like I said, I'm new to digging into actual, legislation and that sort of thing. But if I'm elected, I'm going to walk in with a single payer system. proposal, and this is where I'm starting, and then we can, talk from there. So I don't know, what was passed in the House, and if that was, the solution, like, okay, we're going to solve climate change with this. Certainly it can't be that, because it's multi-pronged and factorial and that sort of thing. But that is my approach, is to look at legislation and have the legislation be my magic wand moment. Here's what we're going to do, and then we can work together to get to some compromise, because obviously we have to compromise. But that's, I guess, a critique of Democrats in general.
Do you think Joe Biden led with his ideal when he came into office? With his Build Back Better plan.
There were some very good things in Build Back Better. I think that he probably led with his ideals there. Not that we can't pick apart little, bits of it here and there, but he led with that. And now it didn't pass.
Yeah,
so when we talk about politics, that's different than like legislation and policy proposals. So I was kind of supportive of the idea that the squad, hold infrastructure bill hostage.
Right.
And maybe that would have failed too. And it's a gamble. But that's where I feel like we need more boldness.
So I think there's probably, it sounds like there's a philosophical difference, or I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but I know you're supported by Oregonians Are Ready. Is that the group that's sort of saying, let's keep moderates in office? Would you characterize yourself as a moderate in this case, or no?
No, definitely my record is entirely progressive. If you look at, for example, Tina Kotek's record from the time that she became speaker and my record, they're nearly identical. And she'd say that she's a very progressive candidate. The reason that I think Oregonians Are Ready and Brian Clem have their eye on me is because I'm very thoughtful about bringing people together. It doesn't mean I'm moderate. It means I'll listen and try to find a way or a path through to a solution that we can live with. And I think that the legislature as a whole is yearning for that right now, so that we don't face more walkouts. Now, and that means I cultivate good relationships with my Republican colleagues so that I can talk to them, and I try to act respectfully and listen to people that I disagree with, whether they're in the lobby or they're my colleagues. With my colleagues, somewhere we're going to agree on something, even if we disagree vehemently, for example, on climate. Now, we do need a long-term solution on our quorum requirements so that walkouts can't happen again. Even our more thoughtful Republican colleagues would say that that's breaking government and they can't do it anymore. So I'm not saying that we have to be afraid of that at all times, but I think that yearning for some ways to do things together is definitely there.
Can you point to a piece of legislation that you're most proud of, that you crafted? I have had, thanks for the question, I've had a lot of things that I found successful that are meaningful to me. Let me point to something that we got done in 2021 that I think is a good thing. And again, it's not the sexiest thing in the world. I had an idea based on some experience that homeowners associations were sitting on top of CCNRs that held racist, bigoted, and sometimes prejudicial language in them. And I thought that it would be a good idea to have those homeowners associations look at those rules, because they get buried and people move into to neighborhoods and find out later what those CCNRs mean and what they regulate. So I dug in
found out that there were probably instances where racist language existed mostly around families and who could live together, and it wasn't just racist; it was homophobic. So what I did there, and one of the reasons I'm proud of the legislation, is I didn't push it myself, but I got it formed up. I talked to the people who I thought would help us, and then I handed it off to two new freshmen, Ricky Ruiz and Dacia Graver, and they were able to take it over the finish line with my help. And in the end, it's a fairly simple piece of legislation. They look at their stuff, and the homeowners look at their rules. They see if there's anything there. If there's something obnoxious, they fix it. If they think it's okay, they ratify it. And right after we got this passed, I had tried to find out, hey, in the state, is this a real problem, or did I just run into an anomaly? And we did find enough instances that there was some racial language. But then right in our own district, in a fairly old neighborhood, somebody kind of got wind of what we were doing and let us know that there was actual language in their CC&Rs that seemed to indicate that they weren't allowed to have people of color visit their house. So, obviously we've grown way out of that, and that's the way I like to do things, and I'm proud of that piece for the way I did it and what we did.
Do you have a bill number on that?
I don't.
We'll get back to you on that point.
Yeah.
Can you point to a piece of legislation that you would like to pass? Maybe your first priority if you win
A
this
single
seat.
payer.
Okay.
Single payer healthcare, hands down. We can look carefully. There's a blueprint. We'll look at what California did. Their proposal and their proponents said that they would actually save Californians money in the long run. So it feels like a no-brainer.
How do you? I think that somebody just convened another work group on single payer. I think in the Capitol. What are you going to do about when you get in there and the insurance industry is on the other side, and they've got? I mean, they're ready for you.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, I'd have to talk and see what the proponents in California had to do and what they did to try. Obviously, they failed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the insurance lobby, it was the doctor's lobby. And there's a part of me that wonders if I can bring some credibility to the process as a physician. And I know there are other physicians, in the state that are working on a single payer plan. I don't know if the current elected officials that are physicians are working on that. But that's the group that I think if we got the doctors groups on board, that we could probably win this. So that's the lobbying I would do.
Do you have experience with like herding cats or anything like this where you'd have to?
So I'm a part of our state society of anesthesiologists, and so we do lobby both in Salem and in DC. So I've been there on that end trying to push for our goals in the legislatures, but I haven't herded the cats myself. I guess the only other experience of herding cats is I sit on the board of directors of our large private practice group. Those are some cats.
The group you're in? Yeah. How big's the practice?
250 physicians, anesthesiologists.
What is it?
It's called Oregon Anesthesiology Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
My neighbor's a nurse anesthesiologist.
Nice.
Yeah, at Kaiser.
Yep, it's a good group.
Yeah. What do you think of the prospects for single payer in Oregon?
Well, I've answered a fair number of questionnaires now asking the question, and I'm interested and not opposed. The trick is, how do you keep a proposal from getting sidelined or killed right away? Now, we have some folks, we've done some work standing up against what you would think of as the industry. We did so with drug pricing transparency, for example. It can be done. It will take a lot of coalition building, I'd say, to start with, and then some tough slogging. So not against the program at all. We do have physicians, both two in my caucus and of course the senator who I've worked with for years. All three have endorsed me in this race, who I would defer to in the thinking about how we do it, because I wouldn't pretend to know how to go about it, except those broad sort of process ideas that I just outlined in terms of coalition building, etc.
So believe it or not, we just did half an hour and we're out of time.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my God, we're just getting going here.
I know.
Are you serious?
Well, we have 35 of these due in 3 weeks. So
Man.
I was going to ask. Busy time.
Yeah.
We have a lot of open seats and a lot.
we do want to let each of you have a chance to offer essentially a closing argument of why we should endorse you in this race. Why don't you go first, since we let him have the first open?
Oh, absolutely. I just feel like things aren't working in Salem. We need change. We've got walkouts. We've got campaign finance that we continue to kick down the road, and I feel like it's disgusting that we have somebody spending $1 million and investing $1 million in a candidate for governor, and I think that's wrong. I feel like we need more Bernie Bro energy in Salem, and so I'm definitely carving out that lane. And like I said, Ken has almost a sterling voting record from OLCV, but in the last general in 2020, he ran as a Fusion Party ticket as Democrat, Working Families Party, and the Republican, and I just feel like that is the middle road. And so if we want to advance progressive legislation, we're going to need some progressives in there. So that's the road I'm carving for myself. And honestly, I think Ken would continue to do a great job, and I know his climate stuff is good. I think that, if we could get campaign finance and it could be a fair fight, then I would feel better about our electoral process. So.
Sure. One quick follow-up on that. What do you think Shemia Fagan did the right thing when she dismissed the ballot measures from Honest Elections Oregon?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and if she had some like technicality of like this can't proceed because of this. My understanding of Shemia is that she's pretty progressive, and I would have thought that if it was at all like could pass legal muster, that she would have supported that, going on. So I don't have an answer for you there.
Okay.
But it was really disappointing. The voters said they wanted it. Mm-hmm. Ballot measures are stupid. So
we have no argument there.
Right. So I mean, I like that the people speak, but now let the legislators do the work.
Yeah.
The threat of ballot measures, however, can be very productive.
Also no argument from me.
So I would say to voters, with respect to me, and this is what I'll be telling folks as I get to know and introduce myself to the part of the district that I don't know very well, is the best predictor of the future is the past. This is 10 pages of accomplishment from the past 8 years, and I'm pretty darn proud of it. And it wasn't easy. I'm not going to apologize for the way I do things. I do not feel like it's a successful path to getting laws passed to come in with your singular idea and then expect people to fall in line behind it. The way I work is I have an idea, I vet it, I build a coalition behind it, I try to get Republican colleagues to agree, get my own caucus to agree, so that we can move it through our own chamber, and then the more challenging thing, moving it through the Senate, where I also have relationships and a record of good and respectful work with senators to get things done. So it's not that we don't have challenges. You can go on my website and see what I think the challenges are. They're still there with climate. They're there with healthcare. They're there with education. They're there with our houselessness problem. And I'll be there. I'll be there to work collaboratively and use the relationships I have with our city council and our mayor our county commission and in our special districts, which we have some important ones like THPRD and the water district, to get the nuts and bolts of government done. That's how I work. And
Have you ever had a productive conversation with Dallas Hurd? I mean, let's take the far out maybe the hardest nut to crack there.
If I was broke down on I-5 in Dallas's district and he drove by, he'd stop to help me. We came in at the same time. And so I served with him on the Environment and Energy Committee the first term. And he and I talked about some interesting things around how do you manage solid waste. And his ideas were not kooky. But people evolve, and I don't know if I could have much of a good conversation with Dallas anymore. I would be friendly and respectful to him, but the culture of no has started over there among our Republican Senate colleagues, and it's really hard to deal with, and could use a lot less of it.
Don't we have to ask the fun question? You get to ask the
Real quick, before we get
question.
to the fun question,
All right.
could I get your ages, please?
Well, that one too. I'm 56. I'll go first.
I'm 40.
57.
Never ask a lady.
I know.
51.
It's not as fun as the past question.
No, the fun questions are still to come. That's not that fun. That's mostly kind of miserable.
Yeah.
The fun question is, at what point for you did you feel a sense of the joyous return to normal in the pandemic? Was there a moment when for me, the moment was going to a Trailblazers game and like being surrounded by something like 18,000 people and realizing we probably aren't going to get each other sick today. And it was strange because it was 2 years after this thing descended, and it almost felt like we were back to life again. And so that sort of inspired this question. What moment for you was it? Either one, you can answer first, it's fine.
Between Delta and Omicron, my aged in-laws came out with my 20-something-year-old boys. We spent a week at the coast, and on the drive back, my father-in-law is saying, can we book next year's? So, amazing, and yeah.
Where'd you go at the coast?
South of Tillamook. I can't remember exactly where it was.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's great.
That was lovely to be back to normal.
We've been pretty locked down. My partner and I live with her 80-year-old mother, and everybody else in the family got Delta. I didn't. So after that, we were ultra protective. And so really, I haven't felt like we were out of it until maybe 2 weeks ago. We were walking our dog in the neighborhood. It was a Saturday, and the mask mandate had elapsed. And everyone was waving at each other. People driving by in cars were waving at us. And you felt like that moment. And so, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Happy it's here.
I hope it's not a false dawn. Remember the window of hope between
Delta and Omicron.
Yeah. We were all like,
yes.
And we all came out of our holes and then
Back down. Yeah.
well,
Well, let's get out of your hair.
good stuff.
No, you've been
Thank
great.
you.
It's been